So everybody likes a little bit of a flutter now and again, a bet on their favourite sporting event, especially when the Grand National comes around. Maybe it's the colours of the jockey silks, maybe it's the name of the horse or some special interest story. Having a bet on it adds a little bit of interest to that underlying sport. But as we all know, bookmakers win in the long term, and that is because they're looking for a certain type of customer.
Good morning, Henry. Good morning, Peter.
Have you been listening to Peter?
I have, yes, I have. I have been listening to him. But, Peter, it's Grand National Day, and everybody ain't as clever as you out there. The mums and dads, the husbands, the nannies, and the wives and the children, they pick out their 4 or 5 horses and they have their 50 pence each way. It's a fun day, Peter. You should be on any day by National Day. Henry, why have you got the expert on Grand National Day? Have him on next week. Have him on the following week. I'll come in with you in the studio and we'll have a chat. But we don't want him here today. It's Grand National Day. We don't want clever people, Henry. We want the mugs that are like what we are.
So do you want to be a mug, or do you want to be amongst the clever people? Bookmakers are great at getting you to place another bet with the anticipation of a big win. But the big question is, how do bookmakers make money from your average punter? So I've got 5 coins here. These are going to represent a betting market. Basically, think of it as having 5 selections within the market. And in order to win a bet against the bookmaker, we need to have, tossing a coin is random. So you can see here we've got heads, tails, across all of the individual coins. And everybody knows if we toss a coin or spin a coin, it will land heads or tails. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, if we get 3 heads, then we will win this particular bet. But if we get 3 tails, then the bookmaker will win. So if we basically go into a market, we randomize this a little bit to make sure that it's completely random, and then throw this out. You can see here, on this occasion, the bookmaker wins because they've got more tails than heads. But what we're trying to do here is just randomize a situation, but we're also trying to represent the market as having a number of different selections. So we're saying there are 5 selections within a market, and we just need to pick a winning bet out of this. Maybe if you do a strategy that involves backing more than one runner, this is a good proxy. But basically, we're just trying to simulate a market of some sort where there is a winner and a loser, and a certain number of selections within that market. So on this occasion, you can see it's mainly tails, so the bookmaker wins. But if we repeat this process enough, and over time, it will all balance out. There will be an equal number of winners and losers. We will win sometimes, the bookmaker will win sometimes, but it basically levels out over a long period of time. If we whack this into a spreadsheet and repeat this over many, many thousands of experiments, we will find that we win 50% of the time. And the bookmaker wins 50% of the time. This is what we would call a fair market. And bookmakers present fair markets because obviously they have a market of maybe 5 selections and they offer odds on all of those 5 selections. So again, you would expect in a fair market that you would win an equal number of times that the bookmaker wins, and therefore everything balances out. So how do bookmakers make money? Well, what we're going to do here is I'm going to do this again, but we're going to mix things up and run it over a number of experiments. So here, 3 heads, the punter wins. So it's 1-0, Mr. Punter. On this occasion, the punter wins again, so it's 2-0, Mr. Punter. He's on a good run, maybe he should quit. 3-0, Mr. Punter. He definitely should quit now. Maybe he should increase his stakes. And there you go, the bookmakers won, because there are 5 tails to no heads, so it's 3-1, Mr. Punter. 4-1, Mr. Punter. And you're thinking, what is he doing here? Because surely this is going to average out in time. 4-2 to Mr. Punter. 4-3 to Mr. Punter. 4-all, Mr. Punter. 5-4 4, Mr. Punter. 5 all. 5, 6. So how 5, 7. So how is what I am doing here? It's different from what we were doing before. 5, 8. So can you see over time, the longer we do this, the bigger that gap is getting. 5, 9. 5, 10. 5, 11. So the punter has won 5 times, the bookmaker has won 11 times. 5, 12. So can you see, over time, the more and more we encourage the punter to play, the bigger the margin is for the bookmaker. This is how bookmakers work. But you're sort of thinking, well, hold on a second here. You've got 5 coins here that are completely random. And yet the bookmaker seems to be winning these bets more frequently than you could possibly imagine. So why is that? Well, if I turn over these coins, you'll begin to understand how that was possible. So you can see that one of the coins has tails on both sides, and this is more or less how a bookmaker makes money. Let's examine this in more detail. So now you understand how a bookmaker makes money. They make it by creating a false market effectively. How can you spot as a punter whether you're actually betting into an unfair market? Well, it's actually quite simple. If you use a betting exchange, on the top of the screen on the betting exchange, you will see a figure represented as a percentage. This is what they call the overround. And if the overround is low, then you're betting into a fair market. But if the overround is high, then you're betting into an unfair market. So an overround is very similar to what we looked at with the coins, apart from the way that you look at an overround is quite simple. If we look at a football match, for example, you have 3 selections within the football match. The home team could win, the away team could win, or the match could end in a draw. One of those 3 things is going to happen. And therefore, there is a 100% chance of a home win, an away win, and a draw. And therefore, the overround should equal 100%. The closer the overround is to 100%, the fairer the market. So if you use a betting exchange, you will find the overround prominently displayed on the screen. If it's not there, you can actually switch it on if you've accidentally switched it off. And that will allow you to identify markets that are fair or unfair. You're looking in a market where there can only be one winner for the overround to be roughly 100%. So where can you find the overround on a bookmaker or on a sportsbook? Well, the simple answer is you can't. They hide it. They do not display the overround. And that is because they do not want you to know that you're betting into an unfair market. So you have to manually work out with a bookmaker or a sportsbook just how big that overround is. So an important thing to understand with the overround is the more uncertain the event, the bigger the number of selections, generally the bigger overround. And that is why the Grand National is a key target for bookmakers and sportsbooks every year. There are 40 runners. It's a very competitive handicap race, which basically means that nobody knows who's going to win. So all of that uncertainty and a very large field size leads to very, very large overrounds. In other words, the bookmakers in theory have a massive edge against you. What we did was we went and had a look at the Grand National to compare how big this number was. And if you actually look at the data, you'll find that on betting exchanges, the overround was 1% or less. But on bookmakers, the overround ranged from 26% to 50%. So basically the amount of margin that was being lost, the number of unfair coins in the game was absolutely huge on the Grand National. And as a consequence, this is why there's so much focus on trying to get you to have a bet on the Grand National, simply because the bookmakers simply cannot lose with overrounds on that scale. So let's put this into context by going back to where we started, which was looking at those 5 coins. We had a market with 5 selections, 5 coins. But you could only ever possibly win, because we were cheating, we were changing the pricing within the market, on 4 of those coins. Effectively, every bet that you made with us, you were risking that you could lose and we would keep one of those coins. So imagine, if you keep on doing this process, eventually you will run out of money. Why? because you're betting on 5 events, but you could only ever possibly win on 4. I gain, on theory, 1/5 of every bet that you actually place with me. So you could actually place 5 bets and completely go broke with no hope of return. And that is because you're playing in an unfair game. And the more you bet in an unfair game, then the more money you will lose over the long term. And that's more or less how bookmakers make their money. So bookmakers always win in the long term, or do they? Because there is a way that you can bet that will guarantee you a win regardless of who goes on to win the event that you're betting on. If that sounds interesting to you, check out some more of our videos.